It is the Banner Baseball Show. Paul Mancano and Danielle Allentuck. Paul back in rainy Baltimore. Danielle has secured the coveted spot in the hallway behind the press box to join here on the Banner Baseball Show. A mere 1 hour before first pitch between the Orioles and the Blue Jays on this Wednesday night. Danielle, thanks so much for hopping on in the spare time you have between Brandon Hyde's pregame press conference and the actual game itself. Hopefully you get to sneak in some dinner as well.
Yeah, of course. Sorry for the crowded hallway. I would get lost if I went anywhere else. So
Let's just hope you
working with
don't
what we got.
let's hope you don't run into the Blue Jays mascot while you're there. Otherwise, that
That is
could
true.
spell doom. All right, let's talk about the news that Cade Povich, Orioles left-handed pitching prospect, is with the team on the taxi squad up in Canada. We don't yet know what the Orioles' plans for him are, and just because he is with the team does not mean he is going to be activated. But you just heard from Brandon Hyde. What did he have to say about the possibility of the 24-year-old lefty starting perhaps the series finale tomorrow in Toronto or in the Orioles series against the Rays in St. Pete?
So he didn't really have much to say, to be honest. He said that he's here in the taxi squad, which we can all see with our own eyes. He was out on the field earlier today, getting some throwing in, but there's still TBA for tomorrow. And there's still TBA for the Rays series. They're basically trying to figure out if Kyle Bradish needs an additional day of rest, and if he does, how much extra time they have. As most fans know, the Orioles don't have a day off for a couple of weeks. They only have 1 day off in the month of June. So they're really trying to keep their pitchers as healthy as possible, especially given all the other injuries they've had this year. So my inkling is I don't think they would have flown Cade all the way to Toronto to at least not pitch him at some point during his road trip. I think that would have kind of been a waste of his energy. He could have gotten it started in Norfolk like he was scheduled to do tomorrow. So if I was to guess, he's starting tomorrow, but that is just my guess.
Yeah, these are not the days of the COVID outbreaks where teams would just lose guys, an hour before first pitch and not be able to replace him. And that's really the reason for the population of the taxi squad. But the Orioles are still making their mind up. There is a little bit of gamesmanship here because when it comes to anybody, they don't have to activate him unless they have plans to use him in that night's game. So the Orioles, Thursday, tomorrow would be Kyle Bradish's, mathematically his day to start. And it would also, like you said, be Cade Povich's day to start in Norfolk. So if it is tomorrow, they could wait until the game, a couple hours before the game, to activate him and to make it the announcement that he's going to start that game. It would keep the Blue Jays off guard, although I'm sure they are preparing for all eventualities tomorrow. It is interesting that they called up Povich at this time, though, because, like you said, they're playing in the midst of a brutal stretch right now. They're playing their 6th straight game tonight. Then they don't have an off day until June 17th. They were talking about this 6-man rotation before John Means, Tyler Wells were out for the season, before Dean Kramer went on the IL. But now they have, Povich as a potential starter to slot into this rotation. Do you think that if he is going to be making a start for Kyle Bradish, that's a spot he could keep just to give the Orioles a little bit more depth during this month?
So that's a bit unclear right now. Hyde was asked about that during his pregame availability, if Povich coming up, is he here to stay? Would he be here to help them get to that 6-man rotation? And Hyde was pretty honest, saying that they don't know. A lot would obviously depend on performance if he does get into the game. But Hyde was also saying, you're going to see a lot of spot starters during the stretch. They're going to need a lot of help to get them through this. It is only June. They have 100 more games to play. And they already have been decimated, their pitching staff. So I think if Cade pitches well, it would be a really good chance that he would stay up. I think there's also a chance that if he comes up, you could see a guy like Albert Torres, who's starting tonight, move to the bullpen and go back to being that long reliever. The Orioles haven't had that since they had to move Torres back to the rotation. So I think that is another option as well.
And with Bradish maybe potentially getting an extra day or two of rest, he's coming off his worst start of the season, just 2 2/3 innings. He threw just 76 pitches just 4 days ago. Do you think fans should look anything into him maybe getting a little bit more time off? Obviously, he had that UCL sprain at the start of spring training that kept him out of action for a little bit. But do you think this is just the Orioles being cautious, or do you think that they are seeing something that they are not particularly liking about Bradish?
So as of right now, I have no reason to believe that it's not just them being extra cautious with him. He is, their number two pitcher. He did finish fourth in Cy Young voting last year. So I think that they're just being really careful with him to make sure he can last through the rest of the season. They haven't said anything about him, being hurt or having any elbow pain or anything like that, like he experienced at the beginning of the season. They just said he experienced, some soreness, was a little tired. So they want to give him an extra day of rest if they can. So at this point, not really a high concern level until we hear otherwise.
Gotcha. Well, the Orioles have the option now to have Cade Povich, who has been excellent in AAA so far this season, coming off his worst start of his AAA career, at least his 2024 season, which he allowed 6 earned runs over 3 innings. But overall, the bulk has been very good. 3.18 ERA, 56 and 2/3 innings, 11 starts, almost 12 Ks per 9. He has been just a slight bit better than Chase McDermott, who is a righty and who is one spot ahead of him in the Orioles' top prospect rankings, at least according to MLB Pipeline. Those two kind of get lumped together because they both came to this organization around the same time, trade deadline 2022. Povich was part of the Jorge Lopez trade. He is a tall drink of water, 6'3", 185 pounds, but that helps. He's got great extension. He is somebody that a lot of external scouts, a lot of evaluators are high on him starting for the Orioles long term just because he has great stuff and his strikeout numbers have been phenomenal this year.
Yeah, and Hydra's saying they love the growth that he's shown over the past year, even just from spring training to spring training. They love that his walk numbers are down, his strikeout numbers are up. They love how aggressive he's been. They've just been really impressed with him so far this season, the way he's performed in AAA. And I think that's why he was the one to get the call. I think, general manager Mike Elias said last week that they're watching him every day. He's in that conversation every day. So he's kind of been on the brink of this for about a month. And now it looks like he's probably going to get that chance at some point on this road trip.
Yeah, and we already saw Connor Norby get that opportunity. They're coming up quick, and Connor Norby has already made an impact in his second big league game. Hits a homer in a blowout 10-1 win. How excited was he to hit that first home run, and how excited were his teammates for him? A lot of guys in that clubhouse that played with him in AAA.
I mean, I think he was ecstatic. He said it was kind of his best moment he's ever had in baseball, and he's had a lot of moments, growing up in the sport. I think his teammates were equally as happy. You saw the hug of Colton Cowser. The two were drafted in that same year. And I think everybody in that clubhouse knows how patient he's had to be, how long he was in AAA. He had over 800 AAA at bat. So I think everybody was just thrilled for him and thrilled that he is making the most of his opportunity so far.
Yeah, it's awesome to see him come up because it shows that it truly was the logjam that kept him down there. It wasn't for lack of production. It wasn't the Orioles were concerned about his game translating to the big leagues. We saw the same thing with Joey Ortiz last year. Had a phenomenal AAA season, just was stuck behind a massive logjam, and he's making a huge impact for the Brewers. You're seeing it so far for young Connor Norby. So hopefully you get to see another debut, Danielle, tomorrow. And then if not tomorrow, perhaps Andy Koska will be there to witness Cade Povich pitching for the first time in a big league game in St. Pete over the weekend. At @D_Allentuck is her Twitter handle. I'm at Paul Mancano and at All Banner Sports. And Danielle has plenty more coverage from Toronto on the BaltimoreBanner.com, where you can subscribe just $1 for 6 months. For Danielle Allentuck, I'm Paul